The Kremlin's official rhetoric invariably paints a picture of success, but Z-bloggers are already beginning to talk about a protracted impasse and the impossibility of seizing territory in the foreseeable future. Propagandist Alexander Arutyunov, known by the nickname Razvedos, made a frank statement. He stated bluntly that the offensive was proceeding too slowly and was accompanied by unacceptable losses, and that plans to create a buffer zone had failed. His words expressed a critical recognition of the real picture at the front. Talking about any serious advances is impossible. Territorial growth is, of course, occurring every week. They report how many hundreds of square kilometers have been captured. But in terms of the area of the regions, talking about liberating these regions using these growths will take us a long time. Large or very large settlements are under enemy control, and the assault on them under current conditions, if we draw parallels with the assault on Bakhmut, Chasov Yar, or Avdiivka, would be a sad experience, both literally and figuratively, Arutyunov said. The propagandist also boldly criticized Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's idea of creating so-called buffer zones in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. He noted that the Russian armed forces are suffering enormous losses in these battles, wasting soldiers they desperately need in other, more vital areas. He detailed the difficulties in several areas, pointing out that the struggle in the border areas is turning into mutual destruction, and the assigned tasks seem difficult to achieve. All border settlements are under endless, incessant attacks by the enemy. We began forming a buffer zone in the Kharkiv region last May, but to this day, border points in the Belgorod region are under constant attacks by enemy drones. The distance that we need to seriously talk about is tens of kilometers. We have to travel tens of kilometers to form buffer zones, while we need to travel these tens of kilometers on the territory of the liberated regions. Under these conditions, forming a buffer zone of 25 to 40 kilometers seems to me an extremely difficult goal to achieve. In this case, exodus of population from the city accelerates. The propagandist's comments are a rare acknowledgement from within the Russian information community of the massive problem of the battlefield and in the rear. Such statements highlight that Moscow's current strategy is not only failing to deliver the stated results, but is also leading to chronic, bloody stagnation.
Kamala Persad-Besesser, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, said Friday her government supports a U.S. approach on stricter immigration laws for the Caribbean and Latin America. According to Associated Press, Persad-Besesser, in her address at the United Nations General Assembly, reiterated her stance on migration, security, and climate change. She defended lawful migration checks, which she said would result in more integrated societies. Most illegal immigrants will not be able to assimilate into their adopted societies, that inevitably leads to greater poverty, crime, and cultural antagonism. This, then, is not phobia. It is not a hyperbole. It is simply the stark naked truth, said Persad-Besesser. Persad-Besesser also expressed her support for U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's proposal to create an international coalition against drug trafficking. Rubio spoke about the alliance during a cabinet meeting at the White House in August. Persad-Besesser also weighed in on the topic of climate change. The antagonistic approach adopted by some climate activists towards the implementation of their climate agenda sometimes does more harm than good, she said.
In conviction, we continue to ask for your support so that this Council reflects not only the interests of the powerful. President Trump's comments on the effects on countries of relentless narco and human trafficking, about organized crime, illegal immigration are correct. Countries are not only defined by geographical borders, but also by cultural identities, religious beliefs, ethnic compositions, and, of course, legal structures. That is why, through legal immigration, persons are allowed entry because they fulfill the criteria to integrate into the existing population and to add value to their own lives as well as their adopted society at large. However, illegal immigration neglects all checks and balances and will only create long-term disorder, as most illegal immigrants will not be able to assimilate into their adopted societies. That inevitably leads to greater poverty, crime, and cultural antagonism. This, then, is not phobia. It is not hyperbole. It is simply the stark, naked truth. Small countries, as member states, consider the form of greater support as we urge the international community to support us. We willingly supported the International Security Alliance announced by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, involving the U.S. and several countries in South America, and of course including Trinidad and Tobago, to combat drug trafficking in the hemisphere. Trinidad and Tobago, I say, is very committed to contributing our resources, as scarce as they may be, and our capabilities to this alliance, in line with the theme of this year's General Assembly, Better Together, to allow the deployment of 5,500 member force to subdue the gangs and restore order in Haiti. The climate agenda has been at the forefront of many speeches. I say with the greatest of respect, the antagonistic approach adopted by some climate activists towards the implementation of their climate agenda sometimes does more harm than good.
Agradezco a la señora Primera Ministra de la República de Trinidad y Tobago.
Tanks and smoke were seen at the Israeli border with Gaza on Sunday. According to Associated Press in a press release, the Israeli military said that its troops continue to expand operations in the Gaza City area. It said that, over the past day, the IAF struck approximately 140 military targets in the Gaza Strip, including military structures, terrorists, and additional military infrastructure. International pressure on Israel to end the war is increasing, with a growing list of countries deciding recently to recognize Palestinian statehood, which Israel rejects. Countries have been lobbying U.S. President Donald Trump to press Israel for a ceasefire. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are scheduled to meet Monday. Israel's campaign was triggered when Hamas-led militants stormed into Israel on October 7, 2023, killing around 1,200 people and taking 251 hostage. Israel's campaign in Gaza has killed more than 65,900 people and wounded more than 167,000 others, Gaza's health ministry said. It doesn't distinguish between civilians and combatants, but says women and children make up around half the fatalities. The ministry is part of the Hamas-run government, but UN agencies and many independent experts consider its figures to be the most reliable estimate of wartime casualties.